Most people aren't going to show you how the sausage is made, but I'm not most people. I also realize not a lot of people understand the amount of work that goes into building a bag like this, starting with a slab of cow. Now, I'm not going to make you sit through the absolute entire process. Nobody, I think, really wants to see all that, including me, because I already did it. But because I think you're special, we're going to do it just this once. When I started doing this about 4 years ago, I was having to punch every single hole individually. And I did that for a few years until I realized there was a little bit easier way to do it. So I had these punches made specifically for this pattern designer. Those holes right there are all exactly 6 millimeters apart. So I had these tools made by Cinnabrooks to give me these little round hole punches exactly 6 millimeters apart. I had 2 of them made. One of them has 5 punches and the other one has 2, so I can get into the smaller little turny roundabouts, that we're doing. You'd think that would cut my pounding time by a fifth, since there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nope, that's 6 things. But in reality, it really only cuts the punch time down by about like half. I know that's not how math is supposed to work, but that's how it runs out. Now, this little cup of tools are my quarter rounds. I was previously doing all these little circle corners with like a scalpel. It was an X-Acto knife, technically. But these have a different radius in every tool. The curve is a little bit different. And it's just to keep those corners as clean as physically possible. I don't even know what this thing is called, but it has turned into my favorite straight edge. My mom gave this to me. It came out of her sewing shop. So, I don't know, it works. Not only is it the best tool I found for finding my center mark, it's also got metal on that one edge. If you use it on the other edge and your knife slips, you're cutting plastic. And I know that because my plastic side has a bunch of chunks missing out of it. Now, where I normally use my sturdy knife on my straight edges, it's really better to go back in with this fine blade. For the corners, it's a little bit more flexible. Maybe flexible is not exactly the right word. It's more turnable. But even with that, if you turn it too tight or get it a little bit too deep, it's still going to snap the end off. Ask me how I know that. Cutting a straight line along an edge of metal looks really simple. And I know, especially here in double time, it looks super easy. But this is because a consistent amount of pressure on the front and the back of that straight edge is really important, because if you start off with pressure in the front and the back slides, when that moves and you cut into your piece, there is no recovery. The entire thing is trash. Since my big knife didn't go all the way through on the first pass, I'm going back in with this scalpel to get all the way through it. This Latigo leather is super tough, which is why I bought it, but it's also harder to punch, it's harder to cut, and by the time I was done with this cow, I was glad. This little tool is called an edge beveler. I have like 9 of them. And what it does is kind of round off the corner of your cut, so that later when I go back in and burnish it, it gives that smooth, round, finished look. Also, it keeps it from mushrooming back up into itself. I'm not all the way sure why that's how it works. I just know that's how it works. Moving on. yeah, I did all the things to all the pieces. Edge work is what separates a craftsman from the slackers. And no, I'm not gonna craftswoman because lady bits or craftspeoplemanship is just ridiculous, and we're not gonna do that. Anyway, you could conceivably go straight to stitching after the work that's been done up to this point, but that's not my style. I'm not trying to see how fast I can get something built to keep it cheap and just toss it out the door. Every time I build something, I want it to be strong, I want it to be beautiful, and I want all that to last as long as possible. Burnishing is one of the details that does that. That little pen thing I've got here has a mix of toconol, which is kind of a creamy consistency, kind of like lotion, mixed with water. You can use water by itself to do this part, or there's like 100 other compounds. This is just where I happen to land in my journey. And here we discover that my edge paint is dried up and chunky. So then I went for a bottle that wasn't, which I would in fact later regret. That first bottle I actually had imported from Italy. It's fancy pants. This bottle is like the first bottle of edge paint that I ever bought, but since it's what I had, it's what I used anyway, and we're not talking about why I got sad about that later. Yeah, back on task. This little painter stick is a marvel of science. It's insanely more accurate than a brush, says the first 2 bags I built without it. That's not to say there isn't a technique to it, though. You can't drag the paint. You can't push the paint. It has to roll, or it's going to look like shit. Now, if you use too much paint, of course, it's going to get sloppy and drip and whatever. But if you use too little paint, you're going to get marks from the teeth of that little spinny dude in what you're doing. It takes a lot of give a fuck to get it right. And turns out I have a lot. I should probably, like, speed through this part or trim it down for the sake of people's attention span. But I'm leaving it in to make a point. It's already running at double speed, and the point of this entire video is for you to finally see how much work goes into each of these pieces. This is just the holder for the buckle, and all this work is going to go into every single one of those pieces. But first, the paint's got to dry. Once again, a normal person could have absolutely stopped at this point, which means I'm not gonna. Here comes the sanding. Every single edge. And then I'm gonna paint it again and let it dry again. The fun literally never stops. Yeah, that's a lie. The fun very much stops. But I keep doing it anyway because that's the kind of guy I am. Alright, here's the part where I shut up for a minute and let you enjoy the soothing tones of the most tolerable elevator music YouTube would give me access to. Yep, we're still doing the thing. This is a step I don't need to do on most bags, but I decided to go ahead and do it with this one because the underside of this hide is pretty rough, and I just want that to look nicer. This is gum trag, this goop that I'm sponging on here. At least that's what everybody calls it because nobody can pronounce the whole second. It's one of those 100 other compounds that I was talking about earlier that you could burnish with, and that is essentially what I'm doing here. The fancy pants people do it with a block of glass. So this is the first time I'm trying it out with this glass. The fancy pants people use like a $60 block of glass. That is not what this is. I found mine for like $20. But I don't think it looks as good as what I've been doing, which is a block of wood. Essentially, this wood is burnishing just like my other wood does. It's the combination of the fluid and the friction that kind of restructures the grain fibers in the leather. And it's going to seal them kind of together and keep it shiny and pretty. Now, this is only working because I'm using the round side of this wooden block. And in a second, I'm going to pick the glass back up. It's giving me the illusion of roundness, but again, it's a lie. So back to the wood. You really only need to do this until you have some sort of level of consistency. And I'm clearly being rude. It'll get there. Here's the front panel. I've already burnished the back side of it and started stitching the buckle down here. But I'm going to go ahead and get these gussets for the front pocket stitched in first. These little pins I found are pretty cool to kind of keep your leather held to the hole so you're not sliding everywhere and wally-goggled. It's just a really huge help keeping your stitches straight. Now, traditionally, most hand-stitched bags that you run across are going to be done with a saddle stitch, unless there's some sort of decorative pattern. There's 1,000 other ways to do it, just like everything else, but saddle stitching seems to be the most common. It's a simple stitch, but trust me when I say that it can be done badly. The thread I'm using now is a braided nylon. It's lightly waxed and one of the best threads you can use, but it isn't round. So if your thread turns while you're stitching, you can see that twist in it. It just doesn't lay right. So I'm making sure that every stitch is perfectly flat. In addition to that, saddle stitching is also very directional. So you have to come in with every stitch first from the same side, or your stitches are going to stagger and look like complete dog shit. Alright, maybe that was a little harsh. That might not be all the way. It doesn't look as pretty as it does if you pay attention to every single stitch, and I only do that because I'm crazy. Although, crazy people tend to make pretty things. And here we are. Thanks for coming along. Ugh. Okay, that's enough of this. It looks like I'm using a nail file here, and it's basically the same thing. It's super rough grit on one side and slightly less aggressive on the other side. But I'm doing that here because I'm trying to get like 4 pieces of leather in this section to line up and be perfectly smooth so that I can burnish it and paint it. That's why this particular section had to be stitched first, because I'm burnishing 4 different pieces of leather and trying to make them look like one piece of leather. Did I succeed? Mostly. But I go back in with a scalpel because a knife slipped somewhere and one of these layers, it just... You just gotta keep doing it till it gets done. It'll be fine. It's fine. Beveling this midsection is a little bit harder than it was earlier because now the softer leather for the gussets is on the outside edge. It's just not as crisp a cut because the grain structure and how it's been treated is all loosey-goosey. Somewhere between sanding with a nail file and this second coat of paint I'm putting on this midsection of this gusset here, I ordered a machine. Now, I'm still viscerally against a sewing machine of any type. I'm allergic to them. I hate them. I will not touch them. But this one is a sander on one side that you can see and a burnish head on the other side, because frankly I'm old and rickety and fuck doing this shit with a stick until I die. It's just too much. So yay for cheating! I finally caught on. This is it, kids! We've almost made it! This is the last one! Because I deleted a few others. I know, you get it. If you're still here, thanks so much for sticking with me. I promise this is the last time I make anyone sit for this much sausage. But I do hope it's given you some insight and maybe a new appreciation for an old art form. Once this stitching's done, I finish the edges, stitch on the top flap, and I built 2 different ways to carry it. I've got a crossbody strap for casual stuff like concerts or going to the fair, because the finish on it makes it spill proof. And I built a smaller handle to upscale it a bit so I could carry it to my nephew's wedding. Also handy in the spill proof category. So it's beautiful, it's strong, it's versatile, and it will definitely last longer on this earth than I do.